Welcome to a journey back in time to the 15th century England, a turbulent era marked by a series of civil wars known as the War of the Roses. This was not just a war, but a dance of thrones, a relentless struggle for power and control between two noble houses, the House of Lancaster, symbolized by a red rose, and the House of York, represented by a white rose. These decades-long battles were fueled by deep-seated rivalries, complex alliances, and a burning desire for the English throne. The stage was set, the players were ready, and the game of power was on. The War of the Roses was more than a war. It was a saga of ambition, treachery, and ultimately, a quest for supremacy that forever altered the course of English history. Both sides had their key players, whose actions shaped the course of this war and, indeed, the future of England. The House of Lancaster, symbolized by the red rose, had some notable figures. Let's delve into the lives and contributions of these key players in the War of the Roses. First up, we have Henry VI. Now, Henry was a somewhat weak king, and his reign was marked by significant instability and conflict. His inability to assert his authority led to the Great Divide in the kingdom, and ultimately, the War of the Roses. But it wasn't all gloom and doom. Henry was known for his piety, and he founded notable educational institutions, including Eton College and King's College, Cambridge. Next, we venture into the life of Margaret of Anjou, Henry's queen. Margaret was a fierce woman, known for her tenacity and political savvy. As the kingdom crumbled under Henry's rule, Margaret rose to the occasion, fighting tooth and nail to secure power for her husband and her son, Edward of Westminster. Margaret's efforts were instrumental in keeping the Lancaster faction afloat during these turbulent times. Last but certainly not least, we have Henry Tudor, later known as Henry VII. Henry was a distant claimant to the throne, but he rose to prominence after the death of Edward of Westminster. He was a determined and shrewd individual, which served him well when he defeated Richard III, the last Yorkist king, at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485. His victory marked the end of the War of the Roses and the beginning of the Tudor dynasty, a reign that would transform England in the years to come. These figures from the House of Lancaster were pivotal in the unfolding of the War of the Roses. Their actions, whether through weakness, strength, or sheer determination, shaped the course of this tumultuous period in history, leaving an indelible mark on the nation's legacy. On the other side of the conflict, we have the House of York, represented by the white rose. Firstly, we encounter Edward IV, a charismatic and capable leader. Born in the throes of the 100 Years' War, Edward was a seasoned warrior by his teens. His military prowess and political acumen led to his ascension as the first Yorkist king of England. He ruled with a firm hand, bringing a semblance of stability and prosperity to the kingdom. However, his reign was not without controversy, particularly his secret marriage to Elizabeth Woodville, which caused a fracture within his own house. Next, we delve into the reign of Richard III, Edward's younger brother. Richard's reign is often shrouded in controversy and mystery, from the rumors of his involvement in the disappearance of the princes in the Tower, to his swift usurpation of the throne following Edward's death. Despite this, Richard was a progressive ruler, implementing legal reforms that benefited the common people. His reign, however, was cut short by his death at the Battle of Bosworth Field, marking the end of the Yorkist reign and the War of the Roses. Lastly, we turn back the clock to Richard, Duke of York, the patriarch of the house. A man of great ambition, Richard laid the groundwork for the Yorkist claim to the throne. His challenge to the rule of Henry VI was a pivotal turning point, leading to the outbreak of the War of the Roses. His death at the Battle of Wakefield did not end his influence. Instead, it spurred his sons Edward and Richard to continue the fight, forever intertwining the fate of the House of York with the tumultuous history of England. These Yorkist figures too played critical roles in the War of the Roses. Beyond the main players from the two houses, there were others who significantly influenced the course of the war. Two figures that stand out are Warwick the Kingmaker and Edward of Westminster. Warwick the Kingmaker, properly known as Richard Neville, was a powerful noble who was instrumental in the War of the Roses. His nickname, the Kingmaker, was due to his substantial influence over the English throne. As the Earl of Warwick, he was a master strategist, known for his cunning and political maneuvering. He played both sides of the battlefield, initially supporting the Yorkist cause, only to switch allegiances and rally behind the Lancastrian cause. His role in the shifting alliances was pivotal in shaping the course of the war. Warwick's influence was so great that his support was often seen as a king-making endorsement. His death at the Battle of Barnet marked a significant turning point, paving the way for the final phase of the war. Edward of Westminster, the Prince of Wales and the heir of Henry VI and Margaret of Anjou, was another important figure. He was the symbol of Lancastrian hopes and the continuation of their line. His role, while not as politically active as Warwick's, was significant due to his status as the heir apparent. His death at the Battle of Tewkesbury was a decisive blow to the Lancastrian cause. This marked a turning point in the conflict, as it effectively ended the hopes of the House of Lancaster to retain the English throne and set the stage for the ascension of the House of York. These influential figures, through their actions and alliances, were instrumental in the progression of the war. Their roles, while often overshadowed by the more recognized figures, were vital in shaping the outcomes of the War of the Roses. Their stories remind us that history is often shaped not just by kings and queens, but also by the influential nobles and heirs who play their parts behind the scenes. The War of the Roses left a lasting imprint on England's political landscape. The conclusion of this tumultuous period didn't merely bring an end to a series of battles, but rather ushered in a new era of change and transformation. The most immediate and visible outcome was the establishment of the Tudor dynasty. The victory of Henry Tudor, who became Henry VII, marked the start of a new lineage on the English throne, a lineage that would rule for more than a century. It was under this dynasty that England would experience some of its most iconic monarchs, including Henry VIII and Elizabeth I. The War of the Roses also brought about significant changes in royal succession. The conflict had been fueled by disputed claims to the throne, a problem that was resolved through the Tudors' clever marriage alliances. Henry VII's marriage to Elizabeth of York symbolically united the warring houses of Lancaster and York, creating a new royal house that embodied both sides of the conflict. This move helped to stabilize the monarchy and establish a clear line of succession. But perhaps the most profound impact was the strengthening of central royal authority. The conflict had exposed the dangers of powerful nobles with private armies. In the aftermath, steps were taken to reduce the military power of the nobility and centralize authority within the monarchy. This shift laid the groundwork for the development of a stronger, more unified nation-state. The long-term impacts of the War of the Roses extend even further. It led to a renaissance in England, with the flowering of arts and culture under the Tudor dynasty. It also paved the way for the Protestant Reformation, as the Tudors broke with Rome and established the Church of England. The War of the Roses, therefore, was not just a series of battles, but a transformative period that shaped England's political future. The echoes of these changes can still be felt today, as the legacy of this conflict continues to influence the course of English history. In conclusion, the War of the Roses was a pivotal moment in English history. This tumultuous period saw two rival houses, Lancaster and York, locked in a bitter struggle for the English throne. Key figures like the weak King Henry VI, the determined Margaret of Anjou, and the victorious Henry Tudor of Lancaster played significant roles alongside Yorkist leaders Edward IV and the controversial Richard III. The influence of other figures such as the shrewd Warwick the Kingmaker and the ill-fated Edward of Westminster was equally crucial in shaping the course of events. The War of the Roses left an indelible mark on England's political landscape, leading to the establishment of the Tudor dynasty, changes in royal succession, and the strengthening of central royal authority. It's a testament to the power of individuals and their actions in shaping the course of a nation's history. So until next time, keep exploring the past to understand the present